America is trying to play empire. The government is lying to you. We need to get back to focusing on ourselves. These agencies became more powerful than the government itself. End all of these wars.
Welcome to the Quest for Clarity podcast. Here is your host, Nolan.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Quest for Clarity podcast. I'm your host, Nolan. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we're going to get right into it. So, as you probably know, there is, of course, the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza that is unfolding thanks to the actions of the IDF and the Israeli government in conducting a war that has, at this point, killed roughly 60,000 people, tens of thousands of people, 20,000 roughly children have been killed in this war, and is now involved in the starvation of children in the Gaza Strip. And they are essentially trying to win the PR war back, because they've realized, based on what I'm going to get into in a second, that the West, for the most part, has lost faith in Israel. They're no longer supporting what Israel is doing in Gaza, and has now gone to the point where they're actually actively questioning what Israel's role is in the foreign policy of the West and the foreign policy of the most powerful government in the world, which is America. So, just yesterday, Canada became the third Western country in the last week to say that they are going to recognize a Palestinian state. It was first France, and then it was followed up by the UK, and now Canada has joined on and saying they will recognize a Palestinian state in response to what Israel has been doing in conducting their war against the civilian population of Gaza. Now, of course, Donald Trump responded by saying that this puts our trade relationship with Canada into question, which is, it's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous thing to say. Our trade relationship with a country shouldn't have anything to do with that country's policy towards Israel, because that's not their policy towards America. That's the policy towards Israel. Our trade policy should have to do with what's in the best interest of Americans. So I'm not happy about that. But yes, they become the third Western country to go against what Benjamin Netanyahu said for his entire career, which is that there will never be a Palestinian state. And they are going against what Netanyahu and the Israeli government wants to happen to the region, to the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. And we'll get into a minute what the Israelis want to happen to the region, which, spoiler alert, I've said it in previous episodes, is Greater Israel. And we'll get into that in just a second. But as I've said already, there is currently a large amount of people starving in Gaza. And this has been admitted by even Donald Trump. Donald Trump said that there is a large amount of starving people in Gaza. And I'll show you the video of that in just a second. But Benjamin Netanyahu is saying, no, actually, there's no starving people in Gaza, and that there's no policy of starvation, and there's no one starving in Gaza. Now, this is the most insane, don't believe your lying eyes type of response for someone to be saying, because we have the images of starving children. We have the videos of the aid areas where there's people piling on top of each other trying to get to the front of the line to get food for them and their families. And it's just disgusting sights. It's awful to watch. And for Benjamin Netanyahu to say the entire world besides him is lying. And by the way, Netanyahu is one of the biggest liars in the world. Lied us into war after war after war on false pretexts. But his story is that everyone in the world is lying besides him. Well, that is now the Israelis' position, is that there's no starvation in Gaza. And I have to say, I'm going to show this video. Charlie Kirk, who I agree with on a large number of things, and I think has been a great force in American political discourse, he put out just a ridiculous video that essentially says that saying that Israel is attempting to starve people in Gaza is a blood libel, is essentially what he's saying, and that it's propaganda to even say that Israel's conducting a policy of starvation in Gaza. And I'm just going to show you the video. It's just so insane. Here, take a look.
Okay, I'm very interested in this story because I hate being lied to, and I hate being propagandized. And this weekend, there was an all-out propaganda campaign trying to make it seem as if Israel is intentionally starving the people of Gaza. I hate being lied to, especially by the media networks. They lied to us about COVID. They lied to us about the vaccines. They lied to us about open borders. They lied to us Hunter Biden laptop.
So this is the most don't believe your lying eyes thing that can be said about this, because we've seen the videos. And here is what Donald Trump had to say about the idea that Benjamin Netanyahu says there's no starvation in Gaza. Take a look.
President Trump, who just a few days ago called on the Israeli government to, quote, finish the job in Gaza, by which he meant, we believe, start the ceasefire. President Trump publicly splitting from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Netanyahu's handling of the rapidly worsening humanitarian crisis. Yesterday, at a Jerusalem conference with Trump faith advisor Paula White, Prime Minister Netanyahu said this.
There is no policy of starvation in Gaza, and there is no starvation in Gaza.
Needless to say, humanitarian groups in Gaza say that whether or not starvation is policy in Gaza, it is reality. And for the Prime Minister to deny the existence of this man-made hunger crisis was too much even for Netanyahu's number one foreign ally, President Trump, to bear. Alongside English Prime Minister Keir Starmer this morning, President Trump was asked if he agreed with Netanyahu's comments.
I don't know. I mean, based on television, I would say not particularly, because those children look very hungry.
At an event about an hour later, President Trump then said this.
That's real starvation stuff. I see it. And you can't fake that. So we're going to be even more involved.
So even Donald Trump is willing to admit that obviously there's kids starving in Gaza. This brings us to the question of what is Israel's end goal. Now, they won't actually tell you what their end goal is necessarily. And by they, I mean Netanyahu and the kind of the mainstream Israeli government. They won't really tell you what the end goal is. They're kind of vague about it. But there are people in the government who will tell you what the end goal is. People like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir and the far, far, far right people in the government that Benjamin Netanyahu has surrounded himself for different political reasons, largely because they were the only coalition that would back him after his corruption was exposed. So people like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir have openly called for the removal of Palestinians from the Gaza Strip, the ethnic cleansing of these areas, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank. And Smotrich himself was even quoted bragging that not 1 ounce of grain would get into the Gaza Strip. And if that's not a policy of starvation of the civilian population of Gaza, then I don't know what is. And as I've discussed in a previous episode on this topic, there are actively plans being drawn up by the Israeli government for a quote-unquote humanitarian city, which looks an awful lot like a concentration camp. It's going to be bringing in Palestinians into a humanitarian section of Gaza and slowly filtering them out into the surrounding countries. They're talking with Egypt, they're talking with Libya, they're talking with Jordan, there's active talks from the Israeli government with all these countries trying to get them to accept 2 million Palestinians from the Gaza Strip and completely clean the place out of Palestinians. And you hear the way they talk about Palestinians. They call them two-legged animals. They've called them grasshoppers. I mean, they actively are enacting policies to dehumanize these people and are doing it in the most ruthless way by bombing their hospitals, bombing their mosques, bombing their churches, bombing their homes, destroying the entire place. Look at any aerial footage of Gaza right now. Just recently there was a report that 80% of the buildings in Gaza have been destroyed. The place is flattened. It's a parking lot. And there's no end in sight. So you have to question, what is the actual goal here? Because the stated goal of getting Hamas and getting the hostages back hasn't worked. None of this has worked towards that. Hamas isn't gone. And Hamas still has hostages. And we're kind of bombing the place as if there's no hostages there, as if there's no risk of bombing the hostages by accident. Because who knows where they are? But they're just indiscriminately bombing the place at levels unseen in modern times. So it's just, there's no concern for what the supposed goals of the war were. And it seems like there's maybe some different incentives here for Benjamin Netanyahu to continue the goal, to continue the war, excuse me. And one of those incentives is, of course, the Greater Israel Project, which I mean, they're bombing Syria right now. And the common response to that is that this is their calculation to make and that they should be free to conduct this war how they see fit for their national interests. No, they're conducting this war with our money. This entire project, from what they're doing in Gaza to what they're doing in Syria to everything they do, almost everything Israel does in the region, to their defense, to the Iron Dome, is done with a blank check from America to do whatever they want. We don't even question, our politicians don't question what Israel wants to do. So this idea that it's Israel's calculation to make and that questioning it is to hinder the war effort. No, my money's going there, so I have every right to question what my money is doing and what is happening in my name, in my country's name. You go, people out there who go to work 5 days a week, work hard for their money, a portion of your money is going to conduct what many in the world see as a genocide. Do you want that on? Do you want the blood from that on America? Because that's how you get 9/11. 9/11 didn't happen in a vacuum. This is an incredibly dangerous moment. I mean, we saw the other day there was the shooting in New York City, which didn't have anything to do with this. But one of the original storylines that everyone was quick to jump on was that the guy was wearing a Free Palestine shirt. Now he wasn't. But you can see how quickly that was the storyline. People were ready to make that the story because everyone kind of in their head knows that what's going on right now brings incredible risk to America. There's radicals that see this, what's going. You don't think the Muslim world isn't furious about what's going on in Gaza, the death of tens of thousands of innocent Muslim women and children? You don't think they're livid? The idea that we can do all this and we won't get any blowback is just, we would have to have learned nothing from 9/11 or any terrorist attacks. It's incredibly careless to think that we won't get anything, that there's no risk for what America's. We saw, everyone knows this, as I'm saying. We saw with Iran, when we bombed Iran, the first thing everyone was saying, all the conservative commentators that were supportive of it, everything they were saying was stay armed in public, be ready to have to fight back against a terrorist attack, stay aware, stay alert. Everybody knows that these actions have consequences and could be incredibly risky to American civilians. And this shows in the latest polls for this war. The latest Gallup poll from 2 days ago shows that 32% of Americans still support what Israel's doing, an all-time low in terms of Israel support. 60% actively are opposing what's going on. Americans don't support this. So the question becomes, why is our government so supportive of it? I mean, we've seen little moments here and there where Donald Trump will say, yeah, they shouldn't be doing that. They're acting crazy there. We had the leaks the other day. There was an Axios report from within the administration that said there's high-ranking officials that say, quote unquote, Netanyahu's a madman. He'll bomb anything that moves. So everybody knows this. What is going on? Everyone is aware that what's going on right now is unsustainable and is not in America's interests and it's not in Israel's long-term interests, because it only incites hatred for Israel, for America, and for the West, who have been supporting this ongoing onslaught against the Gazan civilians for almost 2 years. It's impossible to overstate that the sight of starving children in Gaza and the sight of dead bodies scattered across rubble is enough to radicalize people who feel they have close connections religiously to that region. The idea that radical Muslims in the region wouldn't be incited to have a response to this is incredibly careless, and it's not in America's interest to continue this policy. I mean, it's not America first. And there's just nothing, even if you wanted to argue that that what's going on right now is a good thing, and that Israel's just conducting a war, and they're going to win the war, and they're going to clear everyone out from the Gaza Strip, and they're going to claim that land because they won the war. Well, number one, it's against international law, so they didn't legitimately win anything. And number two, again, that doesn't prove the point of why America is forced seemingly, to fund this war. What is America getting out of this? No one's ever discussed what America is actively getting out of funding Israel's endless war, not just on the Gazan civilians, but on the entire region. The bombings of Lebanon, Syria, Yemen. No one has ever articulated why this is in America's interests. And actually, there's an incredibly overwhelming case as to why it's directly against America's interest to be writing a check to go kill innocent civilians across the world and act like that has no possible ramifications for Americans here at home. It's absolutely insane. It's short-sighted, and it directly goes against everything we know about the region. For decades, our policy in the region has been we will be able to manipulate these different groups, these different sects of Islam, to do what we want. We will fund Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Syria to overthrow Bashar al-Assad. We will fund, in Israel's case, we will fund Hamas to prop them up, to separate them from the Palestinian Authority and divide and conquer, essentially, so that Palestinians will never unify and fight back against Israel. We will prop up different groups in Yemen to overthrow the government in Yemen, and we will just bomb people into oblivion until they accept that we are in charge. None of this policy of might makes right, brute force, none of it's ever worked. The region is more destabilized than ever. There's endless death. The region just reeks of death because of what America has done to it, and Israel has done to it. And all it has brought is more hatred to America. And for some reason, people like to not ever look at why they might hate America. We always like to make it because we're free. It's never because maybe we support Israel and what they're doing to Palestinians. It's never because maybe we have conducted some insane policies to innocent civilians across the region. And then we get 9/11 and other attacks like it and act like it's just out of the blue and that it was completely unprovoked whatsoever. And we just all blindly go and support more death and destruction in the region against people that didn't even do it because we don't understand what we're doing. We're run by people that don't understand what they're doing and don't understand the ramifications of the policies they're enacting. And that's incredibly dangerous for us to be in. That's an incredibly dangerous situation. And if we want to right the ship at all, the policies we need to enact are cut off all funding to Israel yesterday and cut ties in terms of military relationship with Israel. That is what we need to do because they're not an ally. They're a liability in the region, a liability that's only bringing more hatred to the United States, and it's not America first in the slightest. And the sooner we realize that, the better, because it's an incredibly dangerous world that we're in right now because of the actions that Israel's taken. So I'm going to end it there. Getting all worked up over this. I'm going to end it there. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Be sure to like and subscribe, and also go follow me on X and Instagram and Spotify for more bonus content. Thanks so much for being here, and yeah, have a good day.